going on, everyone? This is Zen from Zen World. We're just gonna wait a minute, give people a chance if they are chiming in the stream. So, gonna get started in a little bit. In the meantime, you could look at me and listen to the music. Checking out the stream. Alright, we're gonna get started in a little bit. So as you can see from the cover, it's Who Are the Celestials? So we're gonna do a rundown video on that. Alright. We're going to bring this to a close. All right, everyone. Let's get started. So this is Zen from Zen World, and I hope you're having a great day. So we are discussing the Celestials and who are the Celestials. So we know that we recently got some art. Not recently. Actually, it was about a month ago, containing the Celestials, what they might look like in the MCU. And so here's a quick snippet picture of what they will look like. And for the most part, in this picture, you see one of the celestial forms, but in the background, you see another celestial form. So pretty much they look different, just like in the comic books. For the most part, they have different head shapes, but pretty much a humanoid type of body, right? So just to give you a little bit of rundown in history when it comes to the Celestials were originally created by the first firmament. Now, the first firmament, a lot of people haven't seen the firmament before. If you check out the Ultimates, then you'll get a really rich background into the first firmament. So the first firmament is the first galaxy, or the first universe, rather. And beyond that, there weren't any other universes. It was only the first firmament. So this is the first firmament. I feel like I said that a lot. And for the most part, because I don't want to say he or she, the first firmament got lonely. And from that created what we know as the Celestials. So putting up a quick picture here of the Celestials. But from the creation of the Celestials, there were also Celestials that went against the first firmament, and they became the Aspirants. The Aspirants are basically kind of, I don't want to say the evil version, but basically the Celestials that went against the first firmament, basically. So as we know, the first firmament is the one who created the Celestials, and the Celestials are a race of celestial beings, essentially, and think of them as like scientists and different wonders, right? They went off to different planets and did things like seeding other planets and went through the process of experimentation. Now, through their experimentation, they went to many worlds, right? Not just one. So as the Celestials, now if you look at this picture here, you'll see that all the Celestials don't look exactly the same. They look very different, just like people do. But it seems as if they have armor on. Now, the armor that they have on, it's not really armor. That's just the way they are, as per their creation, right? Some people say they look very reminiscent to Galactus, in terms of how he became to be after his incubation. But anyway, going back into what the Celestials are doing. They made their way all the way to Earth, right? Especially, we're talking about the first host. Now, the first host is basically one of the Celestials. Now, the first host made it upon Earth, and along with other Celestials, and started experimentation on the primates that were there. And from there, the experimentation led to 3 differentiations, right? The first one is the deviants. I'm going to enlarge this picture a little bit. You could see the deviants, which are ever changing and destructive failure. That's what they deemed as destructive failures, right? Um, we know them as kind of like goblins and things of that nature. So that's what they're pretty much look like. Next, we have the humans. Now, the humans are a balance of both the deviants and the eternals. The eternals we'll get into in a little bit. And the reason why is right now we know the humans as who they are, but eventually in thousands of years, there's going to be kind of like a spark of mutation, which is why we have the beautiful and amazing mutants, right? But if we look on the right hand side, we have like the Cyclops, the Emma Frost, and things of that nature. And it's the baseline is from the experimentation of the Celestials or the first host. Now, if we go back, we're going to go back to that image which shows the differentiation. Then we have the third lineage from the experimentation from the primates, and then we get the Eternals. Now, the Eternals themselves are kind of like these godlike beings, right? They have perfect skin, perfect hair. Their powers mimic kind of DC's Superman, right? Where they can fly. Now, there's so many different abilities that they have. They're impervious to a lot of different diseases, notable diseases that would be. Um, and then, for the most part, we have Icarus. Icarus is kind of like the staple character when it comes to the Eternals themselves, right? It's kind of like when you look to Eternals, you always see Icarus. Icarus is kind of like the Superman of the team, so to speak. Now, most importantly, the reason why we're talking about the Celestials, not really the Eternals, is because they're going to provide a worth of knowledge when it comes to what's happening in the MCU, the future of the MCU, right? And also the aspect of opening the doors for mutants and also a lot of other beings, right? But most importantly, I'm going to say for mutants later on, it's because the Celestials are the ones who essentially created um, or seeded the planet to then give birth to mutants themselves. So it's pretty amazing how they plan. I think my theory on in terms of what they plan on doing in the MCU is very simple, right? They're gonna start off by showing characters like Icarus and them, um, and the rest of the team, and as they're living kind of like this holy kind of grail life, and someone who's kind of like an elder on the team or of the Eternals is basically going to give the story to some little kid or something like that about the creation of the Eternals, right? And I think that's where we're going to get pictures and snippets into um, the Celestials themselves, right? So I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. It may not happen that way, but I'm pretty sure that they're just going to give some kind of like history into the Celestials. Now, I don't think that we're going to see the Celestials play a part as like a villain. I think that's going to be for the Deviants, right? The Deviants are going to play the role as the the rivals for the Eternals themselves, right? Um, yeah, so I'm really excited for the Eternals because a lot of people didn't know about the Eternals prior to knowing that they'll be in that the Celestials would be in there. Now the Eternals and the Celestials, they're pretty powerful, especially the Celestials. This intergalactic race of um, humanoid type scientists and things of that nature. So it's going to be pretty stellar. I think it's going to be a really great movie. And in terms of class of power, they are very powerful. Now, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, I believe that they said that Thanos actually beat a Celestial or two Celestials in order to get some of the Power Stones. I mean, to get some of the gems. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's what they said. So if that's the case, now imagine a whole bunch of them, right? Yes, Thanos probably beat one or two, but could he beat like if we look in this picture, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's 10, right? There's 10. Is he going to be all 10? I don't think so. They're insanely powerful in terms of what they're able to do. Um, Now, beyond their scale in terms of like height, of course they have super strength beyond Omega level. Now, I'm saying beyond Omega level because strength is kind of confined to like what they're able to lift. Now, of course, are they able to lift up a mountain? Absolutely. Are they able to push a planet? I'm pretty sure that they're able to. In terms of like energy projection, they definitely have that on a galactic scale, kind of like thinking about the power cosmic, right? They can harness the power cosmic because they are born from um, the power cosmic of the first firmament, and the first firmament is the encapsulation of the first universe, which is comprised of pretty much everything, right? So if it's comprised of pretty much everything, therefore they can utilize all aspects of the universe in terms of power, right? Are they psychic? Can they communicate on a psychic level? I don't believe that I've read that, but I don't see why they couldn't communicate with each other on a psychic level. And the reason why I don't remember seeing any panels in comic books where the Celestials are talking, right? They're talking to each other. So I could totally be wrong about that. But I think it's overall, I think this movie, the Eternals, are gonna blow people out of the water in terms of what doors are going to be opened up from this movie, um, because the Eternals movie isn't. I don't think it's going to be set. Obviously it's not going to be set in the present day. It's going to be set in the past. Um, but maybe they could do some things in the future. Because a lot of people have the question now: if they were around and they're still around and they're eternal, right, and they won't die. In terms of the Eternals, I'm talking about. Sorry, I put up a picture of the Celestials. But going back to like Icarus and the team, if they've always been there, then it begs the question: how come they didn't come to help? Right now, this is a simple answer. They don't really. They think of themselves as like gods, and they don't really trifle with mortal affairs, right? Because they're kind of like the all-knowing, the first of the first, right? So they don't really mess around with those those things. Now, I'm pretty sure that if things got rough, if they're still alive and they're still present in the MCU in the current timeline, that they would have pressed, right? If everything was obliterated or their livelihood was at stake. But we didn't see them, right? And I'm pretty sure that Kevin Feige and them is going to present a really good reason for why we didn't see them in the present timeline, along with other characters, right? So, um, I'm on the cusp of ending this live stream, but I hope you enjoyed a little bit of knowledge when it comes to um, the Celestials themselves. Now, I'm going to just kind of recap what we talked about. The Celestials, right? Let me just bring up a picture again. The Celestials were born from the first firmament, and the first firmament was the first universe. There was no multiverse at that time, and the first firmament was pretty much, I want to say, for lack of better words, lonely, and created the Celestials. And from the creation of the Celestials, we then got kind of deviations from the Celestials that went against the first firmament, and they were called Aspirants. And the Aspirants went against the Celestials, and they created the first Celestial War. Um, and from the Celestial War, we could then say that the Celestials did win alongside with the first firmament. And we kind of get the introduction of the Celestials as just beings that journey and experiment, right? I want to say they're really experimenters. Now, of course, they're among the Celestials. There are different types, right? Now, when I say different types, just like different people, right? There's some scientists. There's some that who judge, right? We have a Celestial who judges. We probably have Celestials that fight, right? Thus, why in the picture we get for the one in the MCU, they look pretty different, right? we have one right here, and then we have one that looks pretty husky in the background. He's like big and like muscular. Um, so yeah. Now I think they don't really have to change too much in terms of the storyline for the Celestials. The one thing that I think that they're probably going to exclude a whole bunch is the notion of the first firmament creating the Celestials. I think that they're probably going to change that, and the reason why is because the first firmament is the embodiment of the first universe, and I think that's a little bit too baffling for them to introduce into the MCU. Um, Probably not in terms of storytelling, but it seems kind of mind blowing for them to even show the first firmament, right? Um, but they'll probably do it. I think the way that the MCU is going right now, that the MCU's the MCU is propelling in a fast direction, and the reason why I mentioned that is because now that they have the rights for the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, the introduction of the Deviants and all of these other characters, the Deviants and the Eternals, will stem and lead way into a lot of different stories, right? For example, Galactus, right? Now, this video is truly about the Eternals, but I feel like when I'm talking about galactic-based characters or celestial-based characters, I do at some point have to mention Galactus. Um, and the reason being is because he is part and parcel in terms of the continuation or the balance of the entirety of the Marvel universe, right? And maybe the Marvel Cinematic Universe once we're fully immersed and introduced to his character. Now, Galactus, we know is, if you don't know fully, I'm going to give a extra quick rundown. He's actually Galen. Now, Galen is from a different universe. I don't remember the numerical number of the universe that he's from, but basically, his universe was dying. Now, this is after the first firmament, if that makes sense. And the reason why we know that is because the first firmament is the first universe. And if Galactus is from another universe, that means there had to be a divergence in terms of the multiverse, right? Now, for Galactus being Galen, before he became Galactus, he was Galen. He was a scientist. He um, kind of like an explorer, very similar to the Celestials. Now his universe was dying, and he was able to make kind of like an incubation type of ship, which then allowed him to travel to our universe, which is the 616. Um, After his emergence, which is after the time period of like thousands of years, right? Not just like in one day, he became Galactus. Now, he hungered, right? He hungered for sustenance, and the sustenance came in the form of planets, right? The reason why it works in terms of balance is because um, if we think about Thanos, Thanos was trying to use the Infinity Gauntlet to take out half of life, right? In order to sustain resources throughout the whole entire universe in the 616 universe, right? Or I don't think in the MCU it's a different numerical value, right? But in this sense, if they are to bring Galactus into the MCU, I think they could do a similar story where his story or his history is from him coming from another universe in the incubation, and he then emerges thousands of years later as Galactus. Now, one of the things that they could do, if we haven't seen Galactus before, well, two things they could do, right? Either Galactus was always present in the MCU, but he was just in another part of the galaxy or another part of the universe during the whole time of Thanos. And when the first couple of snaps are the ones that kind of disturbed Galactus in his, I guess, in what he's doing. He's consuming planets, but he's basically like something. It just took out half of the life of the planet, but then it just reemerged. So he might think he's able to have that cosmic awareness, a sense like all of this is stemming from one planet, and that's Earth, right? So he may decide to go to Earth in order to take care of things so that they never happen again, and he has all the food that he wants. The other is that if he's not currently in the MCU already, that we just haven't seen him, is that possibly he's still in the incubation and he hasn't awoken yet. And we're probably going to embark on the year around the same time the Fantastic Four is going to emerge, that he awakens, and that's kind of like the lead up into him, right? Probably not, but I'm pretty interested to see how they might introduce such high level of ultra or omega based like level characters, right? The Celestials, it makes sense that they just give a history about their experimentation when they came to Earth, which led into the Deviants and the Eternals. Now, if they mention experimentation on humans and they mention the word mutants in that in the Eternals, then we are set. Then we know that the story is gonna give way into what we know, and that is the mutants. The question is, how are they going to introduce the mutants if we hadn't already seen them in the MCU currently? Or have they always been there? I don't know how they're going to pull that off, but I'm excited to see how they're going to pull that off. So I'm gonna jump off this video. Let me know what you think about the Celestials. I'm going to put up a couple more pictures so that we could kind of get a gallery walk into these amazing characters, right? Every time I think about the Celestials, I always come back to this picture because this picture is the one that I known kind of like in the early reading comic books. I want to say from the 90s to the 80s. I mean the 90s to the 2000s and thus forth, right? But if you want to get a really generous historical understanding of the First Firmament and beyond that, and also the Ultimate Ultimates, which is basically the separation of the different. I'm not even going to talk about it because it gets into a lot. But read the Ultimates too, the secondary team, which is comprised of Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, Adam Bashir, which is the Blue Marvel, and a couple other characters, Black Panther. I forgot her name. America Chavez, which is it was one of my favorite teams. I love that line of stories because I love the line of stories that really introduce the celestial based characters or the galactic based characters, such as Galactus when he became the Lifebringer and things of that nature. So I'm ranting here because I'm getting excited when it comes to the Celestials and the Eternals. But I hope that this gave you a baseline and an understanding. If you want another video based on the Eternals themselves and kind of like the rundown on some of their characters, personality types, like when I say personality, psychology of the characters, and also their powers and how they might deviate from the other Eternals, then drop a like, comment, subscribe, and drop your questions about the the Celestials. So before I end this video, I'm gonna start doing some kind of like Q&A questions, not Q&A, but really just questions that I want you all to answer to see if you watched the video. Number one, who created the Celestials? Number two, what was the deviant Celestials that went against the First Firmament and had to battle against the Celestials? And question number three, the Celestials that experimented on the primates on Earth, they then separated into three different subtypes. What were the three different subtypes? Post your answers in the comments below to see if you watched the video and you learned some history when it comes to the Celestials and also a tidbit into the Eternals themselves. So this is Zen from Zen World saying peace, love, and prosperity. Drop a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and definitely share the video if you enjoyed it and you want other people to enjoy the video too. All right, everyone, take care.